Good morning everyone. My topic for today is tackling pediatric orbital fracture when less is more. I have nil financial disclosure. Pediatric blood fracture differs from adult blood fracture with respect to their unique mechanistic and healing patterns, but still most of them are managed according to adult fracture guidelines. Because of multidisciplinary management, there is a bias which is present between ophthalmologists and maxillofacial surgeons, and there is a huge doubt about when should we operate and what is the exact indication when we should operate a child with blood fracture. The aim of this study was to compare functional outcome between non-surgical and the surgical management of blood fracture in a child and to propose a possible management protocol. 38 patients of age less than 18 years with pure orbital blood fracture were evaluated, including diplopia and Hess charting. CT scan to assess the type of fracture, site of fracture and muscle or soft tissue entrapment was done, and the fractures were divided into Group A, which is trapdoor fracture, Group B, which is floor fracture with incarceration, and Group C, which is depressed floor fracture. All the trapdoor fracture underwent immediate surgery by transconjunctival approach, whereas in non-trapdoor fracture, we assessed the gross motility restriction. If it was -3 to -4, we immediately did surgery, but if there was no gross restriction, irrespective of diplopia and enophthalmos, we did a conservative management till 6 weeks. If there was still a persisting diplopia or worsening of enophthalmos, they were pushed into surgical group. No diplopia in primary gaze or no gross extraocular motility restriction in up gaze were the criteria of the success. Of the total 38 patients, 31 were males of age 12 years, mean age, and the sports was most common mechanism of injury. In type A, as I mentioned before, there were 7 patients of which 5 were web-offs, and they all went immediate surgery, of which 1 patient had a residual 10-degree up-gaze restriction, but 6 were successful. In Group B, that is floor fracture with incarcerated tissue, of the total 19 patients, 3 underwent immediate surgery, 16 were managed conservatively, of which 14 had a success. The rest 2 underwent surgery because of non-resolving primary gaze diplopia by about 9 weeks. There was no significant difference between both conservative or the surgical group. In Group C, similarly, of the 12, 10 were managed conservatively, of which 70% success rate was noted, and there was no gross difference between the outcome between surgical or the conservative groups, and they were managed by about 12 weeks. So totally of the 38 patients, 7 were trapdoor fracture which underwent immediate surgery. But the doubtful were the 31 non-trapdoor fractures, of which nearly 68% could be managed just conservatively, only 32% needed surgery. So we already knew that trapdoor fracture requires surgery, but what about non-trapdoor fracture? When should we surgically, when should we repair them? Should we rely on CT? No. Many studies say that on the CT, the size of the fracture does not correlate with amount of diplopia or enophthalmos. Similarly, the herniation of the soft tissue, what we see on CT, does not correlate with diplopia or enophthalmos, as many children still don't complain of diplopia despite a large herniation. So what new did we find in our paper was, in non-trapdoor fracture, it is not the CT which decides the surgery. The clinical science and us ophthalmologists who decide the surgery. Gross motility restriction, immediate surgery is needed. But in case of there is no gross motility restriction, we can wait up till 6 weeks. If there is a persistent diplopia or enophthalmos, only then they can be undergoing surgery. Am I justified in this wait? Yes, many studies from radiology department have proven that the children's bone undergoes remodeling, and because of which the bony growth by about 6 weeks can resolve diplopia and enophthalmos spontaneously also. So to conclude, non-trapdoor pediatric fracture, we can still delay the surgery, and if we are doing the surgery, a transconjunctival incision can be used. This is the protocol. These are our references. So in pediatric orbital fracture, less is the new more for a non-trapdoor fracture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Deepti. Your slides were very good actually.
Thank you, ma'am.
There was no identifier in the patient photos, etc. And anything else?
In case of pediatric adult fractures, there are more of non-trapdoor fracture. There are not much of trapdoor fractures available there. It's no white-eyed blood fractures are seen in case of adults. And in adults, it is more of external manifestations where we see gross the proptosis and huge ecchymosis. All those because our bones have already grown up, but that doesn't happen in case of children. So every child, if there is a history of trauma and if he says he is somewhere bradycardic or nausea, vomiting, we need to still suspect the fracture part. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
One
Yes.
question, Dr. Deepti. You have included children around 5 years of age as well in the study.
Yes, ma'am.
So how did they complain of diplopia?
Children, no, they don't complain of diplopia. They were picked up. Actually, there were 2-3 children who were sent to neurologists because they had nausea, vomiting. And when the neurologist did CT, they picked up the floor fracture with the trapdoor, and then they were referred to us. But under the PICU guidance, then we had to, vasovagal had to be managed, and the next day we performed the surgery. No child of 5 years or 3 years with Weboff comes to us directly as a blood fracture.
Because you included it as one of the factors, right, for conservative management, that
Yes.
irrespective of diplopia or this. So a child of 5 years
No,
I
that
think
would be not, yes, ma'am.
was referred to you.
Yes, ma'am.
The next speaker is
Thank you,
Dr. Hazika Zahoor.
Good morning everyone. I will be presenting on the incidence of secondary hemorrhage following traumatic hyphema at a tertiary care center. Starting with the introduction, hyphema means presence of blood in the anterior chamber. It may occur in isolation or along with damage to other ocular structures. Patients with hyphema usually present with blurred vision, pain, photophobia and lacrimation. Incidence of hyphema has been estimated to be around 17 to 24 per 1 lakh population. Even a small hyphema due to ocular injury can be a sign of major intraocular trauma with associated damage to vascular and the other intraocular tissues. Secondary hemorrhage is one of the greatest concerns following traumatic hyphema. Eyes that develop secondary hemorrhage have a higher complication rate as compared to the eyes that don't develop secondary hemorrhage. The rate of rebleeding varies from 3.5 to 38%. Coming to materials and methods, it was a hospital-based prospective observational study which was ophthalmology GMC Srinagar. Patients were followed up for a period of 6 months. Inclusion criteria: all the patients more than or equal to 10 years of age with traumatic hyphema due to blunt ocular trauma, patients with adequate follow-up of at least 6 months. Exclusion criteria were patients with penetrating ocular trauma, patients with hyphema due to causes like rubiosis iris, iris melanoma, blood dyscrasias and sickle cell anemia, patients with hyphema following intraocular surgeries. Proper history was taken with regard to age, gender, occupation, nature of ocular trauma, activity at the time of injury, time duration between the occurrence of injury and presentation to the hospital, symptoms at the time of presentation were recorded, history of any systemic illness like diabetes, mellitus or hypertension was noted. Coming to results, age of the study population ranged from 11 to 65 years. 50% of the patients fell in the age group of 10 to 19 years. Mean age of study eyes was 24.77 plus minus 12.7 years. This is a table that shows distribution of cases with respect to the mode of injury, with sports being the most common mode of injury, followed by occupational causes, and injury due to fall being the least common cause of injury. In our study, incidence of secondary hemorrhage was found to be 7.5%, with 6 patients out of a total of 80 patients studied developing rebleed. This is a table that shows distribution of study eyes with respect to the grade of hyphema. Maximum number of patients were seen having grade 1 hyphema, and there were only 3.75% patients with grade 4 hyphema. Distribution of rebleed patients with respect to grade of hyphema. Our study showed that with increasing grade of hyphema, there is increased risk of developing rebleed. The p-value was found to be statistically significant with a value of less than 0.05. Coming to discussion, majority of the patients enrolled in our study were adolescents. The possible reason for this is that the younger individuals are more active and enjoy participating in vigorous outdoor activities like sports, and this has been correlated with the studies conducted elsewhere. Most common mode of injury in our study was sports. That is also being correlated with the studies conducted by NG, CS et al., Cairns, Patrick, Philippus, Mohan, RPT, and the incidence of secondary hemorrhage being 7.5% has also been studied in the other studies as well. Our study found that secondary hemorrhage was more common in the patients with higher grades of hyphema, as has been seen in other studies as well. Coming to conclusion, secondary hemorrhage is the most concerning complication of traumatic hyphema, which can worsen visual prognosis and increase the risk of long-term complications like corneal blood staining and glaucoma. Factors like higher initial grade of hyphema and inadequate eye protection resulting in more severe injury are associated with increased risk of developing rebleed. Proper preventive measures and early treatment can reduce the incidence of secondary hemorrhage, thereby improving patient care and visual outcome in these patients. These are a few pictures of the patients who developed rebleed. The first picture is showing a patient of grade 2 hyphema who developed secondary hemorrhage, and the second picture shows a patient with a grade 4 hyphema who developed a bleed. These are my references. Thank you.
So what was the timing at which the rebleed had occurred?
Actually occurred, ma'am, at on third day.
So for your patients, do you have any data available, like when did they have the rebleed?
Yes, ma'am.
So we've not,
I have not included that in that because the primary part I have studied, that was included in the different papers.
also data whether any of these patients were on any anticoagulants.
Yes, ma'am. The patients who were on anticoagulants were excluded from the study. They were not included.
They were excluded.
They were excluded. The patients on anticoagulants were not included from the study.
Shall we? Secondary bleed is more severe or primary bleed?